Welcome to Fishing for Bees. This is my YouTube channel on swarm catching and beekeeping. My beautiful wife Elena is with us behind the camera again, so we're much appreciative of that. I'm just going to take a second to continue to introduce myself. It's been a long time since I did an intro, and I have like 1,200 subscribers in the last 6 months, so I'm sure a lot of you haven't seen it, and a lot has changed since then. So the cover photo of my YouTube channel is my first catch ever. It was a hive body trap in a tree 15 feet up, no bait comb, over scented, and a refusal to move in. So the first time I ever had the joy of handling bees or seeing the inside of a colony was 15 feet in the air on a ladder. So prior to that first catch, I watched a bunch of YouTube and was interested in swarm catching, and I built 2 traps and hung them and didn't catch anything. And then frustrated, I took the whole next year off, didn't even put them up because I kind of thought it was nonsense and it wasn't true. Or at least it wasn't true in my area. And then one winter I started watching it again, and Elena walked by and said, "Bees again?" And I said, "Yeah, bees again." And we hung those traps that spring, and addition to that hive body trap, and we caught. So it took me almost 2.5 years to make my first catch. And after that, it's only springboarded every year since then. So we're over 20 some catches now. We have 6 colonies in our nuke yard, 6 colonies in our production yard. We have a colony on a pollination contract in White Cloud. So, you know, we've caught some bees and we've lost some bees, but the bottom line is we've never purchased bees. We've never done a split. We've never bought a queen. So no money invested as far as the bees. Yes, there's money and equipment, but the bees we've never purchased. And we're very happy with the genetics and what we've gotten. And we're going to start embarking on treatment free here in one of our yards in the near future. So in the past, we've given away 10 frame colonies. If any of what I've said interests you, please like and subscribe, and we'll just get into today's video. So you first look into a colony, you think bees are messy. They're not messy. This is good hygiene. This is propolis. This is enzymes to combat illness. And although it may look not the prettiest, especially with the propolis over here and stuff like that, this is good hygiene. So one of the problems though is when you have frames, they're laying worker frames. This is now all useless comb as far as for a real queen, not a laying worker, to lay workers. I mean, you got some cells here that are good, but all of this is unemerged drone brood because I shook this colony out. I wasn't going to play with it. You'll see in this frame right here, there's pollen. There is no nectar or honey in any of these. These were fed above the colonies, and I have a video on that. So now that these are out of the colony, these have a tremendous potential to be ruined and to introduce pests. So unfortunately, here comes some of the messy part of beekeeping. And if you have plastic foundation frames, I have videos on why I don't use plastic foundation frames. But if you do have them, then you're just going to be able to scrape one side of the plastic and just take it all off. But these are starter strips, so I'm going to try and be creative as I go. With this pollen in this brood, what they have in common is they're both protein. The brood's protein, the pollen is protein, the bee bread is protein, and there's insects that are interested in the protein, and rodents. So I'm in the course of this preparing for next year's swarm season, and I'm also preparing to store these frames. So this one was a really bad one. There's no way I'm going to cut around that. So this is a loss. Now you can melt this down, and I do have a video on how you can do it cheaply. This is brood comb, and I'm really not interested in it. So it's unfortunate that we had a laying worker and we lost a bunch of good comb, but I'm not going to melt this down. It's not going to be cosmetic grade. It's, you know, you can make candles out of it. You can wax your frames. There's a lot that you can do with it. For me, I'm just not going to play with it. So you want to get the protein out of the frames the best you can. I've stored it with pollen in them. Good success as far as not getting them infested. I've, knock on wood, have never had an infestation. So how I store them is I'll take a queen excluder and put it on the bottom and sometimes shim underneath and then stack them and then put another queen excluder on top, and I leave them open. I'm in an area not going to be frequented by wax moths or small hive beetles or ants or anything like that. So I'm strategic where I put it. This is just another unfortunate one, and the reason why I'm getting rid of it is it's just much pollen. Just afraid it's going to invite activity and ruin a bunch of frames. These are great for an additional frame in a swarm trap. So you got your bait comb frame, and this doesn't have any reserves in it, any nectar, pollen, or anything like that, so it shouldn't attract pests. And then you drop this in next to your bait comb frame, and maybe the rest is just starter strips or brand new frames. This is scented. You're not going to get any better scent than this. It's been lived on a long time, so we're off to a bad start here. You can't leave it this way. Yes, they will store nectar in here, and yes, they will use this as a honey frame, but as you go through the course of your beekeeping and you manipulate frames and you move them back and forth, if this ends up in the center of your brood nest during the winter, they can't lay workers in those cells. Those are drone cells. And if they're stuck in that area for a long period of time and she needs to be laying to continue their winter survival, they can't do anything with that. So if it was just a little bit on the bottom, I would keep it. I have a lot of them that are like that with just a little bit on the bottom. That's just from normal living. That's not from a laying worker situation. This is just a bad deal with a laying worker, and it's too random, the cells. They're all over the place, and it causes problems, as I said. So a couple other tools that make this cleanup easier, in addition to just the hive tool, is I really enjoy this Quinn tool. It's got a stouter handle, because you want to get this propolis off of here. It's going to make your life easier, and this doesn't have the greatest handle and sometimes doesn't work the best. So I like the Quinn tool for that. In my case, as you can see, I was working past fishing line and the starter strips, so I like the blunt end of a steak knife. If I end up using this end, that's when I end up cutting fishing line. So the blunt end, I'm just simply running it down. So bring some decent tools. The other thing that's not a bad deal about this is unfortunate, this is a big mess, but you need to be culling your wax, right? So for me to work through this and get rid of this wax, some of them they're only 2 years old, some of them are even newer than that, but you got to get rid of your old wax. Your old wax is going to hold those pesticides and those contaminants that the bees unfortunately bring in because of the world that we live in. And getting rid of this is good for the health of the colony and good for the health of you. So I wish it was different. I wish I wasn't getting rid of frames that were just 2 years old, but the fact of the matter is these pesticides, these fungicides, and all these stuff that is brought into the colony on a daily basis by your bees is a good idea to get rid of. All right, so back to my point about culling frames. I just want to show this, anybody that's been with me from the beginning. This goes to show you, as I said before, how far we've come. So when I see this, I know this was my first time ever doing starter strips, because I thought that you would be better reinforcing them by crossing them. I've since learned that that's not true, and then also as far as what I do as far as cutting these out and trimming them up, when this is crossed, it makes them very problematic. This is the funny part though. Look at this starter strip. I mean, seriously, you can get away with 1/5 of what I have right here. So I could cut this in half and maybe even make 3 strips out of it and get 3 starter strips from the amount that I put here on my first time using starter strips. So this is an old frame. I'm happy to get rid of it. That wax is old and it's carrying a lot of pesticides and problems. So good to see it go. Pretty much done with my swarm traps now. I'm going to be taking them down, but I'm sorting this in 3 different piles. Something that's usable now, which these are not, these ones that I'm completely cutting everything off. For instance, this one will be used next year because it has to be completely redrawn out. Some of them need to be restrung because the fishing line's broke. And then anything that's dry an old brood comb that's ready to be put in a swarm trap next year. So I'm making 3 different sorts, something that's usable now just in case I get to a swarm trap this year and there's bees in it and I need to boost them. If I discover any of these 5-frame nukes didn't get a full frame drawn, or they need just a little bit of extra help, I can put in usable frames. So right here is a perfect bait comb frame. Maybe I take that back, it's not exactly perfect. There's a little bit of pollen in a couple cells, there's some bee bread, but not too bad. So this is going to be sorted separately. This one I would call usable now, right? So if I have a colony that's shy of a full frame, I would give them this, and it has also a little bit of pollen already in it. The problem with the pollen and the brood is all of this is going to mold. Next year it's going to be terrible. It invites pests, and it's just a big problem. So I'll have to keep an eye on this one, but I think there's probably a candidate up at the nuke yard that'll need this, so I'm going to hold on to this one as use this year. This one is all worker cell. It's plastic, so it's not my favorite, and I'm trying to get away from plastic, but I'll save that for a swarm trap. So I think you got an idea what we're doing here. As I told you before, I'll show you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and this is a messier part of beekeeping. This isn't the fun of going into a colony and giving it an inspection, but this part is very, very important. If you don't want to lose your comb to pests, you have to eliminate what they're looking for, or you have to secure it. The other thing I don't do is I don't wrap these in plastic, and I don't create an airtight bubble for anything in storage, either my honey supers or these. Airtight creates more mold. You want air movement through them, but the problem with that is the air movement that can go through them can also be an opportunity for pests to get in there. So I use the queen excluders to keep the rodents out, and I eliminate the protein sources to try and keep the other pests out. I've never used any crystals, moth crystals, or anything like that, and I've never had a pest infestation. So take your time now, and you'll be much happier later. Thanks for watching. I hope your bees are well. I wish I never used plastic. Another stupid frickin' thing that they told you had to do.
Working hard in the bee yard.
This is unbelievable.